In this video, we're going to show you to install brakes on your INFINITI G37 X located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Now on our particular vehicle, we have a locking lug nut. We have the key to remove it. If you just have a standard lug nut, go ahead and take it off. Once you have those removed, remove the wheel and set it aside. We want to go ahead and remove our brake caliper here. To do so, we need to loosen and remove these two bolts. These are 14mm. I'm going to push down those flexos here and get our ratchet on there. And we'll go ahead and loosen that bottom one. Now in most cases, they'll loosen up and you can spin them right out by hand. Now before we remove the upper bolt, you want to be prepared. You want to have either a securing strap or a caliper hook. Something that looks something like this here. We want to go ahead and support the caliper. Never let the caliper fall and hang on the flexos. You can damage that. So as you remove that bolt, we're going to hold that caliper in place. Most cases, it's just going to hang out there. It's not just going to fall off and dangle, but you want to be careful. I'm going to use a pry tool here and gently work this off, rocking it back and forth. Now we're going to swing this up and over and set it right here for now. In our case, we're going to use a securing strap to go around this. And we want to secure it to anywhere you really can. I'm going to choose the upper control arm to hold that. Let's go ahead and remove our inboard and outer pad here. I'm going to slide that out, set that aside, and do the same on the inboard. I'm going to move to the caliper on the top here. This is a dual piston, and we're going to use our compressor tool. Now you can do this one of two different ways. You can actually take one of your old brake pads, set it in place, and use a C-clamp to go ahead and compress this here. We have the proper tool to go ahead and do so. So you want to do this slowly, and what our goal is to compress both of the pistons into the cups. This is a slow process. Don't rush it. Okay. So how do we know we're compressed? The rubber boots themselves around this are flush with the piston itself on both sides. So this is all set. You can go ahead and clean up the cups if you want. You can use a little wire wheel and clean up the rusty cups here. Whatever you do, don't tear the rubber seal or the boot around. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw a lug nut on here. And the purpose of this is when we remove the caliper bracket itself, we don't want this rotor to fall off and land on our foot. So just throw a lug nut on there just as a safety precaution. Let's move to the back side and remove the bolts for the brake caliper bracket. We're going to use our 22mm wrench. I want to loosen these bolts. There's one here and there's one straight up above. These two bolts hold the brake caliper bracket to the knuckle. You want to hold on to that bracket as you remove that bolt, otherwise that bracket's going to fall as well. There we go, and then take that bracket off and set that aside. Let's go ahead and start with our slider pins here. Ideally, this is what you want to see. The slider pins should be free and moving in and out. If yours is stuck, you're going to have to probably put this in a vise and work it out of the caliper bracket. Now this is a rubber boot right here. You want to go ahead and hold that rubber boot and twist that pin out, and it's going to separate that. Okay. And I give this a quick wipe down. We notice this here has a rubber sleeve on it, so we're going to set that there. Let's go to the other side, do the same, slide that out. I'm going to clean this. And if you notice, there is no rubber sleeve on this particular pin. What I want to do is go ahead and mark this here so we know which one that the rubber sleeve goes on. I'm simply going to use a crayon, and I'm going to go ahead and draw on this here so I know that that is going back in that position. Now go ahead and grab that rubber boot. You want to gently peel that off. It just pops on to this ridge or lip right here. Both boots are the same, so you don't have to worry about messing those up. Go ahead and take that boot, squeeze it, and roll. What you're looking for is any tears, holes, anything like that is going to allow dirt and debris, water, stuff like that to get into where the slider pins go. If these are torn, damaged in any way, you need to replace these. Next step, pull out your sliders. Most of the time, you can peel these out by hand. If it doesn't work, use a screwdriver. Before you do this, you want to look at the sliders, and if you look closely, they are different. This one here has these tabs. This side does not. So I'm going to position this so that this pin here, and I'm going to take my new slides and I'm going to position them on the corresponding ends where they're going to go. Use your pry tool, pop these out. Go ahead and get rid of them. Next up, go ahead and use a bristle brush. We want to clean the tracks and the platform where those sliders were just removed from. If you have to, go ahead and use some spray solvent to release some of that dirt and debris on there and scrub away. Now the purpose of this here is you want to make sure that you don't have any rust ridges or flaky rust that's going to cause this to not sit flush. Very, very important. All right, let's go ahead and flip this over. I'm going to repeat for the other side. Now, if you do have scaly rust, it's okay to go ahead and use a flat file to go ahead and clean that up. You don't want to remove metal, you just want to get rid of the rust buildup on there. Okay, that looks good. Our next step, go ahead and use that bristle brush. Clean up the ridge where that rubber boot is to go. And do that on both sides. Want to make sure that that boot seals properly on that slider pin. Now we have our slider pin holes here. I'm going to use some spray solvent and spray some in here. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses when you're doing something like that, and use a bore brush. Flush them out. pretty much want to continue doing that until these cylinders are clean. Now ours are clean. I'm just going to set that and let the remainder of that solvent dry out in there. Now we can go ahead and start to prepare our other components. Go ahead and grab your slider pen. Wipe that down. If you need to, you can use some solvent on this as well. Now, if these are rusty, if this rubber boot is torn or worn, you need to replace these. If they look nice and clean like this here, they're totally reusable, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to clean this one up. Inspect it. And this one is reusable as well. Let's go ahead and prepare our slider pin areas here. Take your boot. If you have excessive grease on the inside, you can go ahead and wipe out as much as you can. And then we're going to go ahead and pop these onto our caliper bracket. Okay, make sure those are sealed all the way around. Next step, we're going to take some silicone paste. Make sure these are clean. Now we're going to put some silicone on here. Now we don't want big globs of it. We want a thin coating. And then you're going to insert this back in and push it in. So I'm going to pull this rubber sleeve down and push this in, and it'll pop into place. Go ahead and work that. Make sure that is nice and smooth. Repeat the process for the other side. Take that silicone paste, and we're going to put a thin coat where our sliders are going to be positioned. Once again, thin coat, not a big glob of it. Go ahead and grab that and align this up. Now this has tabs on the back side here to help line it up in the bracket. Go line it up. Snap that down into place. Now what we don't want is all kinds of grease on the slider. So if you happen to get some on there like I did, simply wipe it off. The reason why you don't want that is that dirt will actually stick to that grease on the slider, and it's going to cause resistance on your pads sliding back and forth. Let's go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. Okay, give that a wipe down. You want to do your final inspection. Look at the side and make sure that your slides are fully seated on both sides. Check this side here as well. Make sure everything is nice and seated fully. If it isn't, find out why and resolve that before you install this component. At this point, our caliper bracket has been rebuilt and ready for installation. We can go ahead and remove our lug nut now. Just be careful of that rotor. Go ahead and remove that. Set it aside. We're going to use some spray solvent on the face of the hub here. What we want to do is use your bristle brush and clear up any scaly rust around the perimeter or on the face here. That way there we can make sure that our new rotor fits on flush itself. Now if you don't get the rust off completely, the rotor may not sit flush and it'll cause a brake pedal pulsation right from the start. After you're done and you're satisfied with how the surface is, I'm going to go ahead and put some anti-seize compound on that hub face. Grab your brake rotor, line that up, and set it on. Now this particular rotor is a special coated rotor and does not need a surface prep with some solvent. If you have a standard flat rotor and it is coated in oil, you definitely want to use a spray solvent on the face as well as the back before you install. Install that lug nut again. That's going to hold that rotor in place while we continue to service the rest of the brakes. Go ahead and take your caliper bracket. We're going to slide that over the caliper. Take that upper bolt. Get that started a few threads. Once you have that in a few threads, you can go ahead and release that, and we'll get the lower bolt in. Move that bracket just a little bit. In most cases, you can just zip these bolts down by hand. Let's go ahead and snug these down. Now if you have a 22mm socket and a ratchet, you can go ahead and pop that on there and speed things up a little bit. Whatever works for you. Now installing your brake pads, you want to make sure that your squeak tab is on the top for this particular model vehicle. Our inboard pad as well, make sure the squeak tab is on the top. The reason for that is that on the upper slide you have this spring tab right here. What you need to do is put this tab inside the eyelet and then swing the pad in. You can do the same on the inboard. Okay, now that we have both of these pads on and we have the spring clips inserted into the squeak tabs, go ahead and grab that caliper. Set that in place. I'm going to install the upper bolt here. Get that started a few threads. Install the lower. And let's go ahead and snug those down. Now we will come back and torque these next. Torque down your caliper to knuckle bolts to 20 foot-pounds. Torque down the caliper to knuckle bolts to 98 foot-pounds. Now at this point, you can go ahead and grab that wheel and rotate that. Remove that lug nut. Once you remove the lug nut, the next step you want to do is hop into the vehicle. Pump up the brakes. That brake pedal might be soft and squishy for about 3 to 4 full presses to the floor. What's happening is you're pushing that fluid back through and into the caliper itself, compressing onto the rotor. You want to go ahead and repeat this process for the passenger side. So go ahead and install your wheel. Install your lug nuts. Once we get all these installed, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Use our locking key. Go ahead and torque down your lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. We're going to use our locking key first. Then we'll continue with the rest in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.